Hello and welcome to the Heat Check Podcast, Miami Herald's Miami Heat Podcast. I'm David Wilson. I'm joined, as always, on the other line by Anthony Chiang, our Heat beat writer here at the Herald. Anthony, what's up?
I probably shouldn't be smiling like this right now.
Given
Just
the
because of
given the state of
the
the
mood of
franchise.
the mood of the Heat around the Heat right now. It's that was a rough trip to be on. Not a lot of happy moments for the team. A lot of injuries. I was wondering if I was gonna get injured myself. I did not come back with a win. First winless trip for the Heat. First winless four-game trip for the Heat since 2008.
Yeah.
First under Eric Spoelstra. But I did come back with this nice Wizards
Wow.
hat for
Some
for
great
you,
sponsors
David.
on there, right?
Yeah, that's a great sponsor here.
Yeah.
It's like we go down the history of this hat.
I
So
believe Anton Jameson designed that hat. If I
really,
read because it was the night they honored the
yeah,
Gilbert Arenas trio. Karan is in the building, obviously.
Karan was there, and I saw Anton, I saw Gilbert, and
I
this
believe
is
it
not
was the first time Gilbert was back in the building
really,
since he was playing. I mean, as an invite, maybe he came to a game at some point just
yeah,
like by himself, but as an invited, uh, like guest of the team, first time since his playing days, obviously.
that's surprising. And this is not a slight on them because they were really good and did some really good things as a trio, but I did not know they called them over there the Big Three.
Big Three. They were the original Big Three.
I was like, what? The Big Three's here? And I'm like, oh. But no, not. I mean, I know they were important over there and they're beloved. So it was a cool night over there. It was at a press conference and
honestly, it just kind of goes to show you how dark the last 40 years have been for the Washington Wizards. That team that never made it out of the second round of the playoffs is like beloved.
Yeah, a little different than the Big Three in Miami, but
yeah, exactly. The team
nonetheless,
of my childhood.
Good. Yeah.
It explains a lot of my basketball opinions. Is the fact that Gilbert Arenas was like the most important basketball figure to me, and when I was like 12 years old.
That was a fun team, though. I have to say they didn't win the championship, but they were a fun team.
They were. They got into it with LeBron a couple times.
Yeah, those are good series.
Deshaun Stevenson was where the beef originated.
Oh.
Soldier Boy was involved one year. It was fun times to be a Washingtonian basketball fan.
Those are good times. And Gilbert was one of the best scorers in the NBA. Like
he played in the NBA right now. He would be like ridiculous.
Yeah, no, he's. I feel like he's underrated. Like just the years he had.
Short peak.
Short, but he was great. Yeah.
But yeah, really, really good. All right, that's enough time. Wasting time on the Wizards. We got to talk about another mediocre basketball team, and that is the Miami Heat right now. Like you said, first winless four-game trip since 2008. It was, I would say, a trip that was like kind of verging on a couple really, they lost a couple close games. I think would have been really good wins, right? That Minnesota game, the Washington game.
Yeah.
They obviously got beaten up in a couple other ones, but a couple moments there where it looked like they were going to have like kind of this moral victory. I think even winning one game on the trip, the way the injuries started to pile up, would have kind of felt obviously a lot different. But they come back now 4 games below 500. Play 2 in a row now against the Wizards around Thanksgiving. But it's they got a lot of ground to make up now, and I know obviously it's not the Heat's fault, right? Like you look at some of the injuries they had, like they were never going to have a very successful trip with all the guys they had out. But we're getting close to the quarter mark of the season, and the Heat are way down at last I saw 12th place in the East. I don't know if it changed last night, but yeah, 12th place in the East. It's tough times right now for Miami.
Yeah, you kind of covered it there. Like they led at halftime in 3 of the 4 games.
Yeah.
Right. And
led big in the Minnesota game too.
Led big in the Minnesota game. Led by 5 with 1 minute left against the Wizards.
Yeah.
Before it went to overtime, and then they were outscored 3-2 in overtime to lose the game, which is incredible. But yeah, 1 win.
I've seen soccer games with higher scoring overtimes, I think.
Kyle Lowry laughed after the game about it. Even after the loss, he was like, yeah, it was great basketball, 3-2 in overtime. But yeah, like, and he had 7 guys available in that Washington game. Like, there were some good things that happened considering their circumstances, and even one win would have been probably seen as like a good trip just because of everything they went
Yeah.
through. But and last year they would have won one or even two of those games. Like how many of those type of games did they win last year? Where
Oh, I mean, that was honestly like there's a lot of stories of last season, but one of the stories of last season that gets forgotten is that they handled the COVID
yeah,
winter better than anyone,
better than
with
almost
just like
anybody.
random
Yeah,
guys coming in, and all those guys played well, and they just kept winning.
yeah. But the bottom line is they didn't win a game, and they're 7-11. They have a very tough stretch coming up. You have two against Washington, which honestly, they're not easy games, and it's hard to beat a team twice. But you got to try to win those two games at home because then you go on the road and face Atlanta, two games against Boston, and then you go to Memphis. Um, if the Heat don't get healthy, if they don't get a few wins here, if they lose one of these Washington games, I mean, I still think this team healthy is a top 5 team in the East. I still feel strongly about that, but they're digging themselves so deep into a hole that even when they do get healthy, considering their schedule coming up, it's going to be tough. And we still don't really know kind of their identity, which we've talked about from the beginning of the year. Are they last year they're an elite defensive team? This year, I mean, they haven't been healthy, but they haven't really even been average on defense. They've been,
Yeah,
I think the defensive rating is like, I guess a little pretty much average, like 14th, 13th, but that's because their zone is carrying them. They're playing 25% of their possessions on zone, which is insane. They're on pace to shatter the NBA record for most zone play in the year. They have like the third best zone defense, and with that heavy usage, that's carrying their defense because their man-to-man defense is second worst in the NBA. So is that sustainable? Probably not. They haven't really been good on defense, and offensively, they're one of the worst three-point shooting teams in the NBA, which last year they're the best three-point shooting
yeah,
team. Like there's just so many things that last year were strengths that are weaknesses this year, and a lot of that is because of injury, but also they also just haven't been able to replicate the formula that won them so many games last season, and it is concerning because you're reaching that magical 20 game mark now, and you're nowhere close to where you want to be.
yeah. Again, like you said, it's almost hard to evaluate this team fully.
Yeah.
Because we have not seen them at full strength. But obviously, like you said, the concerning part is in that small sample size of games that we have seen them fully healthy. They haven't had Jimmy Bam and Tyler in a game since
November 1.
November 1st. Yeah, when they beat the Warriors. So like there are very few games that we've seen them all, but for the most part, they just haven't played well in those games either. So
No.
That's the concerning part is you can't. You can talk yourself into like, oh, we just need to get healthy because, because we played well last year, but
Right.
you can't really look at. We talked about it a couple of weeks ago. You can't really look at anything that happened this year and feel good about this team. And the other part of it is the Heat got the 1 seed last year, right? Like, do they get to the Eastern Conference Finals if they don't get the 1 seed? I don't know. Like they avoided Boston and Milwaukee until the Eastern Conference Finals. Obviously, they got a very they rolled over Atlanta in the 1-8 matchup, and then got a Philly team that was like kind of broken a little bit, and like the Heat didn't really get tested until the Eastern Conference Finals, and obviously the Heat have a lot of like if they wind up in the 7 or 8 or even 6, like it's gonna be a lot tougher for them.
Yeah, definitely. And I never want to like say anything's impossible because look what Boston did last year, right?
Yeah.
Where they just turned things around like drastically in January after a really bad start to the year. But it's going to be really hard for the Heat to get a top 2 seed at this point, right? Like I'd be pretty shocked if they ended up as the top 2 seed in the East, considering how well Boston and Milwaukee are playing and where the Heat are at this point. Like they'd have to make up a ton of ground and really turn it around. So you're talking about, you're going to have to probably face, and it's early, but the way things look right now, you're going to have to probably face one of those 2 teams, even if you do make it into the playoffs as a 4 or 5 seed in the second round. You're not going to not going to avoid those 2 teams into the conference finals. So the road is probably going to be tougher. They have a lot of things to figure out over these next few weeks and months. This is now where they expected to be, obviously, when they brought this team back at 7-11. Victor Oladipo hasn't played yet. We don't know when he's coming back. Tyler Hero, by the time you're listening to this, maybe he plays Wednesday against the Wizards, but he's questioned when he told reporters yesterday at a Thanksgiving event that he still feels discomfort in his ankle. Jimmy Butler's out, although spoke to somebody, and at first there was some concern of whether it might be serious, the knee injury, but all tests came back clean, and he is expected to come back soon. So I wouldn't be surprised if he's back at some point later this week. But we still have to figure out what this team is together. How does Tyler fit in the starting lineup? How does the rotation shake out? That whole process has kind of been delayed because so many guys have been in and out. So yeah, I mean, there's no other way to put it as like, yeah, the Heat are probably better than their record, but their record is their record, and that's where they are right now. And they have a lot of ground to make up if they want to get to where they want to be.
Yeah, they're probably better than their record, but are they that much better than their record? That's like that's a big part of the question too. Because this team does not look like one of the best teams, even when, like we said, even when they've been healthy, does not look like one of the best teams in the East. I guess we should talk about something like that. I mean, like I said, it's hard to evaluate this team right now, but we should talk a little bit about the actual basketball we saw on this trip, which there were good moments, but I think a lot of I guess the one thing we should say is I think on the list of concerns you would have had about this team, pretty high on the list would have been they're old, are they going to be able to stay healthy, and that's coming to fruition, and I think basically the worst case scenario of what this season could be, both based on that and some of the basketball stuff we've seen, right? Like you said, how does Tyler fit in the starting lineup? How does that affect the roster? The eternally frustrating, I think, Bam Adebayo, offensive engine type of stuff is still he was in obviously a really tough spot on this trip as the one star available, but
even him, he missed the first 2 games of the trip.
Even he missed the first couple games. But what were your big takeaways basketball wise from this trip? Is there anything we can actually learn from what we saw on the court?
I think people need to stop complaining about Kyle Lowry's conditioning.
Yeah,
he's been one of the only players been available all season. He's second in the NBA in minutes played, which is not ideal, obviously, at 36 years old, but he's been able to carry that load. He played 51 minutes against Washington, had a triple-double. He's not obviously not going to do that every night, but the fact that he could do that still and is staying healthy and is playing back-to-backs and is playing those big minutes. I mean, he averaged 40 minutes a game on the trip, which is just insane. I think that's one of my biggest takeaways is all those people that are complaining on Kyle Lowry's conditioning. I think we've spoken about this before. How I feel like it's overblown because he played well last season until he strained his hamstring, and that was an injury, and it happens, right, to older players. It wasn't because of he's not in shape. He's obviously in shape. So that would be my first big takeaway. Second, we saw extended minutes with Nikola Jovic, and I think that's what everyone wanted to see. There were moments where his potential flashed. There were moments where I think we saw there was plenty of room to grow, especially on the defensive end and rebounding. You could tell that Eric Spoelstra, he doesn't trust him, but he played other guys over him late in games because of kind of his defensive mishaps throughout his playing time, where he played Jamal Cain over him, he played Orlando Robinson over him in one game. It's like we expected. He's young, he's not that big yet, he's thin, so he's not a great rim protector right now, and that's kind of what the Heat were looking for in that zone. There were some things to take away, but it's really hard to take away anything big picture, because a lot of these guys, Jamal Cain, Orlando Robinson playing 20 plus minutes against Washington, Nikola even, he was out of the rotation before this. There's so many guys who have played big minutes that Haywood Highsmith played 30 minutes a game on the road trip.
All these guys won't. Not gonna happen. Yeah,
it's not going to happen. It was good to see them get run and get this experience, but this is not the Heat team that anybody expected to see a few weeks ago. These are guys that are supposed to be back end of the roster guys that had to play big minutes because so many guys were out.
Mm-hmm. I want to talk a little bit more about Jovic because that's the biggest, I'd say, bright spot from the trip. Yeah. But let's take a quick break and we'll come back and break down some of the maybe some of the interesting the the young guys, the lessons we can take away from this trip. So we'll be right back. Okay, so I think the biggest basketball takeaway you can actually make from the trip is seeing some of those young guys out there. Specifically, I think Jovic obviously is the one who's most interesting, and he didn't look out of place, I don't think, on this road trip, which is pretty encouraging.
Yeah, I mean, again, you saw his potential. He's very skilled offensively.
Yeah.
Has better touch around the basket than I would have thought at this point, in his career. Didn't shoot the three ball particularly well. He shot 20% on threes, which is not great, obviously. But you saw the potential. I mean, as a facilitator, he just has a good feel for the game. He gets off the ball really quickly. He could push the ball in transition and kind of runs a fast break pretty nicely, and looks smooth and fluid. So yeah, like there's something there for sure. But honestly, my big takeaway was like he still has a long ways to go. I really think. Like I know a lot of people are pushing for him to play next to Bam and start and like play the guy and like give him a shot. What else do you have to lose at this point? But I think defensively, he just needs to get better, and that's going to come with time and rebounding as well. Like 4.5 rebounds in 30 minutes a game, pretty much on the trip. When you're playing in the front court,
he
at that
can't
size,
be your four
you just can't,
now.
right? So right now it's on necessity. You need somebody else like him to be playing big minutes because so many of the facilitators and scorers are out. You need somebody like that out there. But I still think that he's probably, when everyone's back healthy or most of the rotation is back healthy, he probably won't be in it because of how much room he still has to grow, and maybe that includes time in the G League. I know the Heat have talked about that, about him sending him to the G League for more game reps. This has been good for him these last 4 games to get this extended time and see where he's at. But yeah, I think just like with any young player, there were very encouraging things, but there were also things like, okay, he still needs to get better at this, and that's why that playing time is valuable.
It reminds me a little bit of what the Warriors had with their rookies last year, where it was like Kuminga and Moody, like every once in a while, like they would have like little stretches where they were like important role guys for them, and you obviously not perfect players, but valuable contributors, and then once we got to the finals, those guys were nowhere to be found, right? I think I think those guys maybe played a little bit during the playoff run, if I remember correctly, but that's kind of what it feels like to me with Jovic. Like we're gonna have these certain games, certain stretches of the season where he's going to be important to this team and have good moments. But if this team makes the playoffs and makes a big run in the playoffs, it's hard to imagine that he's going to be a big factor. But like you said, I think it's impossible not to feel better about him coming out of the trip because you can see, like you said, there's flaws there, but you can see they were kind of flaws we knew he had already, right? He comes in with a skill set, and we saw that skill set translates into the NBA game in a way already at 19 years old in a way that is really encouraging for a guy who, again, he's 19 years old, playing in Europe. Like you never I didn't know we're better at evaluating European prospects now than we were 10 years ago, but you'd never know how the move from that to the athleticism, the speed of the NBA game is going to translate. And on the offensive end, I thought he looked pretty comfortable for the most part. Obviously, shot like he's got to shoot it better, but like good in transition, good with the ball in his hands. Like the kind of stuff that we knew was his skill set. Like you could see that it's going to work here. Yeah,
he has some stuff we just can't teach. Like just his feel for the game. The fact, like, what impressed me so much is like how quickly he gets off the ball. Like he doesn't really hold the ball much. He's always looking for the next pass.
Yeah.
This has a good vision. And for the 27th pick, like late first round pick, you can't ask for much more than that. Like he has the potential to be, I would say, a starting player in the NBA if he really like maximizes that potential. Like he has that type of unique skill set.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think there were encouraging moments. I think he's, obviously you never know what happens in a trade, but he's a long-term piece for this team, right? Like he's a guy you could envision fitting nicely next to Bam as a front court partner, which he'd have been searching for. They kind of it's a revolving door, but he could be that guy if he develops, into a better defensive player, put some weight on, add some muscle, and become a better, just average defensively, and also become a little bit of a better rebounder. So the numbers weren't great with him and Bam out there on the trip. So I had him here. They played 36 minutes together over the last 2 games when Bam played, and the Heat were outscored by 13 points per 100 possessions. So Again, nothing was good over those really much those
Right.
2 games, but they weren't exactly producing like amazing results. So again, still work to be done, but encouraging.
You mentioned Haywood Highsmith playing 30 minutes a game on the trip. I think in the preseason we thought maybe he was going to be the next
Yeah.
Heat guy to come out of nowhere. Him, Jamal Cain, any of these guys show you anything that makes you think that they're going to help the Heat once everyone gets healthy?
As depth guys, but not anybody that I feel like needs consistent minutes. You know, like Haywood Highsmith had moments. He's a good rebounder, 8 rebounds a
Yeah.
game. Has length, a solid defender. Again, didn't shoot the ball well. Shot 25% on threes on the trip. Had a few turnover issues. They shot 33% from the field. So not a great trip for him, but he has certain intangible things, certain skills because of his just physical gifts that make him interesting. But I don't think he's going to be a consistent rotation player when everyone's healthy. Jamal Cain, I thought was impressive. He made a few baskets, around the rim over Rudy Gobert, which I thought was really like not a lot of guys do that, right? And he was able to a few times, which impressed me. But again, just a depth player that I think, maybe if the Heat need him because guys are out like this trip, he could help out. But I don't think any of these guys are going to be playing consistent minutes when guys get back.
So when are we thinking these guys are going to get back? By the way, you mentioned Tyler Hero, Jimmy Butler. Hopefully, not too
next week
serious.
or so. Yeah.
Yeah. So is the hope basically by the time these, like we said, they got a couple against the Wizards and then some tough ones coming up. Now the Wizards are pretty good, I guess, but is the hope that we might see some of these guys back on the floor by the time that this ramps up again?
Yeah, I think especially with Tyler and Jimmy, I would say I think the hope is by next trip, right? Where the trip starts on Sunday against Atlanta. You would think by then maybe Tyler or Jimmy would be back at that point. So they shouldn't be too long. Victor Oladipo, obviously, I don't know.
Yeah.
He was on the trip. He was working out, but he says he still doesn't feel right. So I don't know if that's another month. I don't know if that's going to be 3 weeks. Like that's like a fluid thing. Obviously, Omer Yurtseven underwent surgery. He's out probably until like at least March. And then Duncan Robinson sprained his ankle, and that's probably like another week or so. He turned it pretty good. So, but yeah, I think at least Jimmy and Tyler, the two biggest ones, like they should be back relatively soon.
The importance of this stretch coming up after, like we said, you dropped to 4 games below 500. Like, is there a point here where I don't want to say like panic because there's no like what good does panicking do, right? Like, I mean they're gonna I would at this point I think they would probably have to be like pretty aggressively thinking about a trade at some point here, right? I mean we're a long way from the trade deadline, but the way things are going, it feels like if they want to contend this year, and they want to contend obviously every year in Jimmy's prime because who knows how long it's going to last. I would think a trade has to be a thought at some point down the road, but like I don't know, 7-11, like a long way to go. We're not even at the quarter mark. Like at what point here are we like, all right, this team might just not have it this year?
I mean, I think these next games are crucial. Like you gotta like stop the bleeding now. You can't fall deeper, under 500. This 6-game stretch coming up, again, it's still early, but 2 Washington games, Atlanta, 2 Boston games, and Memphis, like it's not an easy stretch. If they go like 1-5 during this stretch, they end up, 8-16 after 24 games. Yeah, I mean, how do you not panic, right? That's tough to come back from. Like you're gonna have to play, to really get to like a 5-6 seed and avoid the play, and you're probably gonna have to play like 10 games, 12 games over 500 just to get there over the rest of the year. So yeah, this they gotta stop the bleeding now. Like they gotta get a few wins again. Like just try to survive, hover around 500 until you hit your stride. But you can't keep falling, further away from 500 because it's asking a lot for them to come back from that and really like just put themselves in a position where they can have playoff success.
So these upcoming games, like we get a little bit healthier, right? And you string a couple wins together and all of a sudden it feels a little bit better. But like we said, again, it's hard to evaluate this team because
It
we haven't seen it.
is.
But like we've seen some moments. Obviously, I think last time we recorded it was on the heels of the Suns win, right?
Yeah. That's what I'm saying. Like things change fast, right? Like we could
Yeah.
come back next week and they would have been on a 3-game winning streak. They just beat Atlanta and they're going into Boston with a 10-11 record. Not great, but still much better than they are right now. And it can be a different feeling. Like things change fast, but point is like we haven't really seen too many encouraging things from this team.
Yeah, right. So, that's I guess the big question.
Yeah.
Like, what do we need to see from this team in these next couple of games? Other than they got to win,
health,
like you said, obviously.
Health, yeah.
But like, can they like we said, the Phoenix game kind of was like that's how they want to win.
Right.
We just haven't seen a lot. Like, can they even replicate that blueprint, or was that just a total outlier performance? I think that is like a huge question that still has yet to be answered.
I think when they're healthy, they can still be a top 10 defensive team, and that's what they need to be to actually be like.
Well, we've talked about it a lot. The person, like when you have Jimmy, Bam, and Kyle Lowry, and Caleb, you should be good defensively. Like, there's no reason they should be as bad as they are. Yeah.
And obviously they're not going to play 60 zone possessions a game when they get everyone back like they were on the trip, which is just like I think you would appreciate this quote. Kyle Lowry said after the Wizards game, "We were the Syracuse Heat tonight," because they played like 63 possessions.
Don't want to be Syracuse right now, by the way. They're quite bad.
You don't want to be the Heat right now either.
You don't want to be the Heat.
So yeah, like again, that's how different they had to play. They basically played zone the entire game because they didn't have any other option. They needed to keep guys out of foul trouble. They needed to conserve guys' energy. They didn't have a lot of their top defenders playing. Like they had no other options. They played very different than what their identity should be on the trip. Which again is probably why like one of them maybe the one like thing positive you can take away is like okay, this is not really the Heat. Like they're gonna be a lot different. But again, you're losing ground. But yeah, I think what we need to see moving forward is something closer to what they need to like your long-term identity.
Right.
And it's hard to be that when you're not healthy. So I guess the first step is just getting guys back so you can be closer to what you expect to be. And they need to be better defensive. Like they can't have the second worst man defense in the NBA. That just can't happen if you're the Heat. Like you need to depend on your defense. You're not going to win many games with your offense. Just not the way you're built, right? Like you're a defensive-led team. And if you're going to have one of the worst man defenses in the league, like it's going to be hard to avoid the play-in at that point.
Yeah. The zone has been a fun gimmick for this team, a fun change-up going back all the way to the bubble, right? I think that's the best they ever looked at it.
Even before that, even like 2019, I think it was like 2018.
That's true, yeah. I'd say the bubble is when they kind of, like it looked the best. It's been a fun change. I mean, it's been a part of their, every year it's been part of the game plan since then, but it's just, it's not, one, if you're having to run it that much, like just not a good sign. And two, like it's just not going to work every game or everyone would do it, right? Like it's hard to play zone in the NBA.
It is. And to be fair, like their zone has been, again, very good.
Really good. Yeah.
They're like way above average. Like that's the reason they're actually like ranked overall average in defense because their zone has been so good and they've been playing it so much. That's how good it's been. But like you said, is that a formula for success in the playoffs? Like, no, it's not. No, like there's a reason why the Heat don't play much zone in the playoffs, right? They usually a lot in the regular season. When the playoffs, we don't see it that much.
Yeah.
So, I think here at this point are doing anything they can just to win games, right? And that's what they need to do right now because of the personnel they have available. But again, they need to get guys back so they could play the style or like the team they want to be. Because until they do that, we don't know what this team is. We don't know how they fit together yet, even though they have so many guys back, which is crazy to say, because so many things still need to be worked out that they haven't had a chance to do because so many guys have been in and out of the lineup.
All right. I think that's as good a place to wrap up as any. A very, kind of unproductive conversation, frankly. Like there's not a whole lot to take away from this trip other than the record is bad and eventually that's gonna catch up to them. Like they're, you can say we'll be fine when we're healthy as much as you want, but those losses all count the same in the end. And a huge part of the Heat's success last year was how good they were in the regular season. Got anything good going on for Thanksgiving?
I'm in town. I'm in Miami, so that's good.
You are, yeah.
Just gonna spend it with the family. How about you?
Yeah, just hanging at home pretty much. Weird the Wizards come in and I guess they spend Thanksgiving in Miami, right? It's kind of weird. They come in on Wednesday and then play again Thursday, Friday. I mean, yeah.
They're
it's
here.
interesting for them.
They got here yesterday, and I guess they leave either Saturday morning or Friday night.
I guess there's
Thanksgiving in Miami. Yeah, it's worst places to be. I would say.
All right, you can follow Anthony on Twitter at Anthony_Chiang. He's got all your Heat coverage. Are you on this trip again? You heading out on the road?
I'm doing Atlanta.
And
then Barry Jackson, our colleague, has the 2 Boston games. And then Memphis I will do. So broke it up this one.
All right. You can follow me on Twitter at DBWilson2. I'll be at Miami's regular season finale on Saturday and the Dolphins game on Sunday. And I'm much more excited to see the Dolphins play on Sunday.
Are the Hurricanes going to make a bowl?
Yes.
Okay. Bold prediction.
I got a prediction to win this weekend.
Okay. And they'll take that, right? Because that's the extra time is so valuable, like to practice. They'll take the bowl, right? Yeah.
Yeah, I hope they get a really early bowl. I mean, I would love the Gasparilla Bowl, which is I think a couple days before Christmas. Really get my vacation started a little early instead of having to go to El Paso on New Year's Eve or whatever. So
you don't want to be in Shreveport?
No, do not want to be in Shreveport. I think they could get that bowl though. I think that's in the mix if they make it in. But I think Gasparilla feels likely to me if they get in. But what do I know?
Any chance they play the Gators in a bowl?
I don't think so because Gators played in the Gasparilla Bowl last year, right? I think that was where they played UCF.
Yeah.
And they don't like to send teams to the same bowls back-to-back years usually, unless they have.
I'm always rooting as a Gator alum and as a Miami native. I'm always rooting for the Gators and the Hurricanes to play in a bowl game. And there's always seems like there's a chance, but
I know. Yeah, you would think they would do it more. They would set it up like that more often, but whatever. All right. Thanks as always for listening, and we will talk to you guys next week.